I have received many requests asking me to share my Shahada story, so I'm finally doing it, and it's quite long, so I will do it in stages. So this is part one. I think before I begin to tell my story, I need to give you a little bit of background information. So I am half Italian. My mother is from Sicily and half Nigerian. My father born and raised in Nigeria. And growing up in the East End of London, I was surrounded by Muslims. However, kind of our family social circle were most definitely non-Muslim. My mother was born a Roman Catholic, and I will tell you a little bit about my father's background later on in this series, inshallah. But I wanted to share two experiences I had of Islam as a very young child prior to embracing Islam. And one of them was when I was 8 years old. So I grew up, as I said, in East London in a council estate that was full of Bengali Muslims, and directly opposite our living room window at the time was a new masjid, and it was kind of like a container. So I would, as a young child, kind of 8 and under, I would observe men, Bengali men, majority Bengali men, I think a few Somali men as well, walk into this kind of makeshift masjid. And where the masjid was opposite my living room, when I would lean on the windowsill, I would be able to see into the actual prayer area of this this new makeshift masjid. And I would observe as a very, very young child the way that these worshippers would pray. So I would see them, bow down, I would see them prostrate, and something in me as a very young child would be drawn to that. So I would find myself leaning on this windowsill as many times as I could, trying to catch the men of my, council estate go and pray. And the way that they prayed was of great interest to me. I found it quite fascinating as a very young child. Unfortunately, my childhood was one where I witnessed a lot of arguments between my parents. There was a great divide in their approach to life, in terms of their culture, their personalities. And so unfortunately, my childhood was one where I witnessed a lot of fights. And as a child, to witness that, it's quite traumatic. It does have an effect on you. And I remember one particular incident, and I believe I was about 8 years old at the time. I had witnessed my mother and father fighting. And, it was quite an intense fight. And I remember feeling incredibly distressed by what I had witnessed. And I went to my mother's room, grabbed a large shawl that she had been gifted by a Pakistani work colleague. And I took the shawl and I placed it on the ground and I made sujud. I prostrated. So as a young child, I replicated what I had witnessed, leaning on the windowsill, what I had witnessed in the mosque opposite where we lived. And I remember in sujud saying, God, please make them stop. Help me, just place peace in this family. So that was kind of like one of my first experiences of Islam. Fast forward a couple of years later, at the age of 10, on my birthday, one of my classmates was hit by a massive truck as he was crossing a zebra crossing, running to purchase some kind of play cards. I don't know if it was Pokemon or something like that. I can't remember. But he got knocked over and died instantly. A letter was sent to our school. A letter was sent to our parents from our school, informing them of the fact that he had passed away, and that all of his classmates would be invited to his funeral. And it was it was then that I first entered East London Mosque as a 10-year-old child. And I remember wearing a scarf and followed my Somali classmate, her name was Layla, in how she prayed. And I still remember the feeling that I felt at that time, at the age of 10, going into sujud. It was spiritual. It felt like home. It felt right. And that was my second experience of Islam before I became Muslim. And it would be a number of years later where I would meet someone who would be a huge part of my Shahada story. And I will say a little bit more about that in the next part of this series, inshallah.